Hi, today I'm here with Gabriel Leslie, who's a Director of Studies in a Cambridge language school, and got in touch with me because he was interested in the kind of people who were applying for jobs at the school and the kind of qualifications they had. So I thought it'd be interesting to have a bit of a conversation about that. Gabriel, hi.
Hello, Joe. Hi.
Nice to have you here. Maybe you could just start by giving us a sort of a brief synopsis of your teaching journey and how you got to be where you are now.
Yeah, of course, sure. Well, I guess like many people, a long time ago now, I started off, I did a TEFL course myself, a Celta course, and basically in order to go and work abroad outside the UK, in my case, and that's what I did for a few years, and I worked in European countries, which was great, and I had a great time, and that initial Celta course allowed me to do that. And I came back to the UK to do some academic work actually, but ended up back in the world of TEFL in the UK and worked in language schools here as a teacher initially and kind of carried on because I enjoyed it and did lots of teaching basically, and then gradually moved into sort of more senior teaching role and eventually did some kind of assistant DOS kind of stuff. And then I moved into Celta as well, doing some tutoring on Celta courses, teacher training, which was great. And currently, I'm a director of studies in another Cambridge language school.
Yeah. So tell me, you're now in charge of hiring new teachers. I wonder what it is that you look for when you're recruiting staff.
Yes, sure. Well, I guess unsurprisingly, I hope first thing is basic qualifications. For teaching roles, I'm basically looking for someone with an initial teaching qualification. Yes,
Sure.
that's definitely what I'm looking for first. Beyond that, I'm looking for a variety of other things, maybe common to recruitment in general in terms of skills and all the rest of it.
So when you're interviewing, are you always looking for people who've got experience?
Not necessarily, no. Experience, I mean, it's certainly an important thing that I look at and take into account, but it's not essential necessarily. And for example, recently I went through the recruitment process for someone who just finished the Celta course. And I did that partly because they had a grade A in their Celta course and a very good reference from their Celta tutor, which I followed up. And they came across very well and talked very intelligently about their Celta course and about being a teacher. They also had a professional background as well, which helped.
Mhm.
So from my point of view, that was actually a very attractive candidate because if I recruit them before another school, then I could potentially, obviously they could teach for me, for the school, and be a very good, asset for the school going forward. Of course, it can be, it can be important experience. You wouldn't want to recruit a whole body of teachers with no experience. You probably want to,
Sure.
at least a balance, of
Yes.
course. But in itself, it's not necessarily a barrier. No.
Okay. So let's move on to the kind of the main reason that we came here in the first place, which is you said that you'd had problems because some people are coming with qualifications which maybe aren't so useful or don't prepare them.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, this is the thing that prompted me to, get in touch with you, Joe, just because I wanted to have an opportunity to kind of put that message out there a bit to try and help people understand what the way things work. Because increasingly, I think for one reason or another, I've had lots of applications from prospective teachers with TEFL qualifications, which they sometimes very confidently put on their CVs or talk about, which unfortunately are not really sufficient in themselves. They don't tick the box, basically. If you Google TEFL qualification,
Yeah.
you'll get a whole bunch of
Oh,
organizations, which I
yes.
shan't name, which offer quote unquote TEFL certificates and talk about,
Hmm.
getting a job as a teacher and so on and so forth. And it's true that with the certificates that they sell, that
Hmm.
they train you for, you may well be able to get a teaching job in many countries around the world.
Hmm.
Probably the main reason you're getting those jobs, though, is because they perceive you as a native English speaker, and they probably give you the job anyway. Okay. However, if you want to work in a UK language school, which
Hmm.
many people want to at some point, even if they
Sure.
begin abroad, of course, is you need a TEFL qualification of a certain type. The basic criterion is one that includes 6 hours of observed teaching practice. So that doesn't mean you observing other people teaching, just for the record. Some people interpret it that way. It means a qualified individual observing you, the candidate, teaching to real students.
Yes.
In a teaching situation, in an English lesson. And if your TEFL qualification does not include that, then you are not satisfying the criterion laid down by the British Council, which is the main accreditation agency that accredits UK language schools. So for someone in my position, a big part of my job as I'm in academic management is we are inspected by the British Council, and it's quite a lengthy, a robust inspection regime. And big part of my job is making sure that we are satisfying all those criteria. And in the area of teaching and learning, the British Council criteria include having teachers who have specific teaching qualifications of the type I've just described. So for me to employ teachers without those qualifications is a problem.
Yeah, I can see that. So basically we're talking about either Celta or Trinity Cert TESOL. I think there are a couple of other organisations that run similar things, but I know that often those things are, there's 6 hours of teaching practice, but perhaps it's peer teaching or not teaching with real learners.
Absolutely, that's right. Yeah, that's it, isn't it? So as you say, Joe, the Celta, or so many job adverts you might see, requirement is a Celta or Celta equivalent TEFL qualification. And the key thing there, as we're saying, is that observed teaching practice. And, that's why they cost more, because they are more significant qualifications so if you run a Celta course, as I have done, you are in turn assessed by external, in the case of Celta, Cambridge assessors who come in and watch you assessing teaching trainees. And that again is that very robust kind of system behind that, and that's what guarantees the quality, and that's why it's recognized.
I think that's really true, picking up on that, because I'm an assessor. I've been to I think over 60 centres, and it's really interesting how there are small differences between courses, but actually it's an incredibly standard product given the range of contexts in which it's delivered. It's a remarkably standard project, I think, and I think it's pretty well standardized. I mean, very well standardized, actually. All trainers have to do a standardization every year and all that sort of thing. So I think that things do help perhaps give employers like you some kind of, and obviously people like the British Council, more of a sense of reassurance, let's say, that the things being at a certain level.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It is. It's true, isn't it? It's reliable to say. It's a minimum. That's true. It's got a minimum threshold, but it's a process that individual's gone through, the trainee has gone through, and they've reached that threshold. And Celta courses are failable. Unlike, frankly, some certificates you're going to pay for, really they're going to give you the certificate no matter what. So and what did it involve anyway? But a Celta course, is failable, isn't it? And if you don't reach that minimum, for example. So
So the other thing that's interesting to me is that you talked about having a Pass A candidate, and I think if people have got Pass A, it's pretty unusual, and they're usually they are quite outstanding. But the pass grade at Celta, something that's often levelled, I think, at Celta, is that the pass grade is a very wide one. And I know that myself as a Celta tutor, that it does, go from I'm just about safe to let loose in the classroom to I nearly got a B, but I can quite keep all the balls up in the air at the same time. But given another few months teaching in a classroom, I'll be a very competent teacher.
Yes.
I think at the end of the Celta, obviously tutors write a report which itemises what the strengths and weaknesses of each candidate were. So I'm interested, from your point of view as an employer, how much stead is put on that report, how much you read it and think about it.
Yes, no, that's a very good point. And I agree with what you said Joe, about the the gradations. I think they could be looked at definitely, because as you say, getting an A is very difficult and it's very quite unusual. If someone does, then it's a very good sign. And going back to the reliability in a way, from a positive point of view about Celta and the assessment, if someone's got an A, it means they are good. That does actually mean something. It's not just given for free, right? And a B, again, is very good as well. It's very good, but it is very good.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
But it's got, again, quite a small band, which not many people get. So A or B is great, and I would definitely attract my attention in a good way, absolutely. But as you say, the past is maybe too broad. I agree with that. So the reports, that's where the report can come in to help you, get more information about that. And I have looked at them. I've recently, someone sort of proactively sent me their reports from the Celta course, and and it did prompt me to kind of think about asking for that from people more, actually, because I did look at it, especially with my experience having done it before, so it's kind of maybe more accessible to me. It means something. And I looked at it, and it was actually, they had a pass overall, but they had a good report. And I can look at precisely the things they had a higher grade in were more or less important things from my point of view in terms of recruiting someone coming in. So yes, it was meaningful and useful, definitely, and good for them. Yeah.
That's great. So, I mean, on that note, I suppose it's interesting to say, so what kind of things are the tick box things for you? What are the things which stand out and make you go, yeah, I'll interview this person or whatever?
I think for me, because I'm thinking about people going forward, potentially people getting better. That's the thing, making progress. So some of I think anyone who's done a lot of training or is recruiting is sees the kind of qualities in people which give you confidence that they're going to progress. And that means things like maybe being aware of their own practice, actually having, and that obviously means that they have the framework there, the ability, capacity to improve. Things like, I guess, the more student-centered things might be important to me, so I can see that they are taking good account of the things that impact on students. They can have that empathy or whatever you want to call it, so they can see things from a student point of view. And if they don't have that from the beginning, you can learn that, I guess, but it's great if people have that from the beginning, and you can see that that's going to take them in a good direction, I guess. So
Great. That's really interesting. So if I were coming to apply to your school, what tips, as a novice teacher or someone who's just out of a Celta course, what tips would you give me?
Okay, yeah, I mean, I suppose some of these might be a bit more generic for getting any job. Maybe some of them more EFL specific. So based on my experience, let's say my recent experience, I would say, okay, a few generic things first. Be on time for your job interview.
Always good.
Always good, which is generic, but actually, again, I think it's good if people can see, again, that maybe that skill of putting yourself in other people's positions. So if you're applying for a job, it's useful if you can put yourself in the shoes of the person who's trying to give you the job, because they want someone, so they want to give you the job. You try to look at it like that. So you've got to give them a reason.
Interesting way of looking at it, isn't it? Yes.
I'd say a lot of interviews now at EFL, always, maybe but even more now, are remote or over Zoom, as we are now, or whatever, Teams, whatever it is, kind of video conferencing platform. And so check your tech that it's going to work, so you're set up to do it. And that is a problem more often than not. And again, it's generic maybe about getting a job, being a good applicant, but again, it's EFL specific, because people, if you do that successfully, again, it gives someone like me confidence that you're going to be in your classroom in time to set up stuff, teach your class successfully, right? So again, if you're not doing that for a job interview, it's just a little thing. Again, it's like, how's that going to work? Again, generic stuff, but again, do your bit of research, think about, the school you're applying for or why you want the job, so you can answer those core interview questions. Why are you applying for this job, or why are you leaving the current job? So, that's pretty generic, but again, it's absolutely basic, because I want to feel confident that you are, you want the job, basically. So there you go. More specific stuff about EFL, I would say that a lot of candidates, if I ask them a question, something like, tell me why you're a good teacher, let's say, right? Because everyone's got their own questions they like asking. Some of them are more kind of standardized and others. I like that one. I tend to like quite open questions. And what do they say? They say, I have a good rapport with students. Okay, fine. However, it's a bit limited, that idea. It's not really enough. I think that's great, but I need more than that, really. So I want, and like in lots of things, and lots of maybe more generically too, you want specific, relevant, appropriate points that people are going to make. But I want them to say things like the things that they probably should know. It makes a good teacher, right? All the steps, all that, planning lessons, understanding, how students make progress, giving effective feedback, whatever it is, all of those basic components of what good teaching involves. That's what I want them to talk about, basically, right? How they manage different levels, how they manage different kinds of, learner, all of that stuff. So that, I would say, to me, that's a tip from me, I guess. Yeah, that's what's going to convince someone like me that they're actually a good candidate. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you. Do you ever do demonstration lessons? Do you ever get people to do a demo lesson or anything of that nature? Because I've myself done that sometimes. And one job that I had once, I had to teach demo lesson, and actually the interview that I did was it was a long time ago, and the interview actually went really badly. But I did a demo lesson which went really well, and I think because I was nervous at the interview, I'd been a long time since an interview, and so I hadn't been teaching very long at that point. And she asked me a grammar question that actually at that time I couldn't answer. So that really then put me on the spot, and it was awful. And then she put me in with an elementary class for just I think 20 minutes or something, not a long time. And I felt very comfortable there, and that went really well. And so she gave me a chance, and in the end it was a great school to work for. I did my Delta there.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Yeah, about seeing someone in the classroom, that's really useful. Absolutely. So, and of course, people are nervous if they're in that scenario for it's a job interview and teaching a lesson at the same time to a bunch of people you've never seen before, with someone watching you is really tough. And I've been in that situation myself in the past in various occasions. It is nerve-wracking, but it's, again, I think people should try and see it as a great opportunity. Definitely. It really does give you a bit more scope, I think, to show you're more in control, actually, so you want to try and take control of that and show what you can do. Absolutely. So it is really, really useful for someone like me to see someone in that position. And I hope, people can see it's an opportunity for them as well. Yeah. Show what they can do. Definitely.
Okay.
Again, maybe a bit generic in a way, but also EFL specific, is trying to show that you're committed and ambitious within EFL, because I think a lot of applicants, maybe, and it's understandable why early on, especially a lot of people working in English teaching, they do see it as a stopgap or as a temporary kind of thing, which, I get that. And we've all probably been in that situation, actually. But, if you are looking at it, if you are trying to look ahead, look to the future, then you should see it in those terms, really, and try and talk to employers, to show that you're ambitious in that way, right? To ask them about training, ask them about further qualifications, to demonstrate your interest in the wider kind of aspect of the job. And that's encouraging. People do that. Not many people do, but if they do, it's good.
It's interesting. It's actually a tip that I always give to my Celta trainees. I always say that if you go to a job, you should be asking. You're also asking, what resources will be available to me? What kind of support will be available to me? What kind of development opportunities will I have? And I know, that because they may think that feels needy or something, but it doesn't feel needy. It actually comes across as professional and interested and motivated to continue your own development. So, I think that's really important. And actually, I think it's really important too, because not so much in the UK, where things are a lot more standardised, and you say there's British Council inspections and what have you, but there are many, many language schools overseas which frankly are quite exploitative and don't support their teachers, and and they can kind of chew them up and spit them out, really, because they're not giving novice teachers support that they should have. It should be expected that you should have support as a novice teacher. Actually, as any teacher within any school, I think support is really important, isn't it, in an ongoing way?
Yeah, no, definitely. No, I agree with that. The more questions they ask, the better. And I'm not exaggerating, absolutely,
Mhm.
because it gives me confidence that they know, they're
Yes.
thinking about it properly
Mhm.
and they're serious about it, and they've really thought it through. And if they're thinking that kind of stuff through, is a good
Yeah.
sign for thinking other things through and doing a good job. So the more questions, the better.
Right. Well, I think that there's lots of really useful information there for both kind of CELTA candidates and people who are thinking about doing a course and which course to choose. That's great. Well, thank you much. Very there. Well, thank you. Well, thank you very much for all of that. That's really interesting, and I'm sure there's a lot of
Pleasure.
stuff there that will be useful for people looking for courses and also applying for jobs. Thank you.
My pleasure, Joe. Yeah, thanks for having me.